Hey guys, Thomas the Silly Jr. here, aka Mustached Tom, here to review Love, Simon. Yes, it's once again been a really long time since I've done a movie review, but hey, that's just how I roll, I guess. Anyways, I went to check out Love, Simon, which is a romantic comedy with our lead, Simon, secretly being in the closet. He has his friends by his side, Liam, and the two ladies behind him in the poster. No, I'm kidding. Abby and shoot, I don't remember the other one's name. I had it on the notes somewhere. But anyways, uh, so his family doesn't know. So the dad uses tries to play it up, but doesn't even know. Using terms like fag and stuff like that. Uh, but he still gets help from Simon to do uh, website stuff for his wife. Anyway, uh, so Abby, I believe Abby is the white girl on his right there. I could be mistaking the two. But anyways, she mentions this website that mentions another closeted gay guy, and Simon wants to definitely check this out. And he gets a message, and it's from the message is signed from Blue. So he signs up. He sends a message, creating his own alter ego, I guess, and keeps trying to check his mail throughout the day. But the principal does take his phone, and then they do a play based off of a real play in real life, Cabaret, which is interestingly enough is a play I actually took part of, but more on the technical side. But enough about me. Uh, so afterwards, he does get another message from Blue after receiving his phone back, and he starts to message him back and forth. And he eventually goes to the computer where he does even more emailing, but he leaves his notes up, and the one of the leads in the cabaret play sees his computer monitor, and Simon starts to suspect. I forgot how this is set up. I just wrote that he starts to suspect that it is Bran, one of his other classmates. I think he's looking for something, and then he cut something that just in the notes that kind of reminded him of Bran or something like that. So Simon gets pulled aside by the cabernet leader, who is Martin, and Martin mentions how he has the information that Simon is gay and is the Blue character as well. So Simon, not wanting to out the other character that we don't know quite yet, is Blue. He wants to keep everything a secret, so he decides to help Martin uh, hook up with. Oh, I did write Abby, so I think Abby is the other woman. I could keep getting those confused. Anyway, regardless of which one Abby is, he goes to this party, and he brings along Martin to try to get that all worked out. But it doesn't really go that well. He ends up getting drunk, and he ends up going home drunk. So, he's still thinking Bran, whichever one it is, Bran, I think it is blue, but then he sees Bran kissing a girl, so that goes out the window initially. So Simon goes home drunk with one of the other, with the white girl. I'll just call her that because I'm gonna keep getting those two confused because I wrote Abby and I kind of started getting them confused on my notes, so whatever. Anyway, so she starts to suspect something's going on, but she doesn't get it out of him at any rate. So Simon takes part of the cabaret. Oh no, actually, he starts to talk to us because he has been narrating from the start, and he starts to narrate us as to coming out as straight, why is coming out as gay the more complicated of things, and then it cuts to this weird cutaway where all the straight people in the movie come out as straight, and that it's a that now is the oddity, at least in the this sort of thing. And I guess that's where the comedy aspect is trying to play in, and these sort of weird cutaways are a little bit of a distraction. It does kind of take you out of the movie a little bit. I have seen that aspect done before in other movies. There was an entire movie, a smaller movie nonetheless, that kind of did the exact same thing. It literally took that aspect and said, what if, if straight people were the one that were ostracized and whatnot. But it was weird. It was short. It was and then it turns into a musical number for whatever reason. And yeah, it does kind of take a weird dive there for a moment, but it does get back into the main bulk of the movie afterwards. So he accidentally writes another note, but in this message he writes the word love. To Blue, that is referring to, of course. So Abby joins. Oh yes, Abby is the black girl. I do remember this now because I do remember in the that at some point Martin gets her up on the table and gets her to say I am Abby and I'm an independent woman, or something along those lines. So yes, that does happen. They end up standing up at this waiter place while Simon's checking out the waiter because it's a guy. And now Simon's starting to think that the crush is Blue is the waiter guy because he went to go out to check his phone. So Simon talks with Abby about her situation. And then they get in the car when they get ready to leave, and then Simon finally admits to her, for the first time out of everyone in the group, that he is indeed gay. So he sends another message when he gets home to Blue, and Martin walks with others and ends up joining Nick. Oh, Leo was the other one. So Simon's trying to hook up Nick with Leah, even though Nick clearly liked Abby from the very beginning, but he was trying to save Martin for Abby. So he did this whole convoluted thing where he tried to get, all that going on. But he sees that the waiter that he was checking out was actually checking out Abby too. So we cut to a field. Martin is in a bear costume. He goes out to the field. He cuts off the anthem to admit to the entire school his feelings to Abby, and Abby just says no. So Martin runs off, and then eventually goes off into the internet, admitting to everyone that, or, you know, pushing out the idea that Simon is gay, to try to get everyone to forget what just happened to him. So, his sister, who I get, because Simon has a sister, I didn't mention that earlier in the review, but apparently Simon goes, or his sister goes to the same school, I guess, because she figured out he was gay as well, because she checked out the site that the school is associated with, so I assume that they go to the same school. I'm not sure if that's the case, but whatever. So, his phone is going off like crazy. So he decides to come out to his parents as well, because he's like given up the idea that, that he needs to hold on to it, and it, might as well simplify that aspect. And he tries to go up to his friends, and his friends are more upset with him because they figured out that he did this whole convoluted thing behind their backs, so then they end up going off. Leah admits that she had feelings for Simon too, but then runs off afterwards. So, while he's at school, he runs into some other girl named Jackie, who's like, "Oh, you broke up with me," and then he was all like, "Yeah, because you're not a guy." And she was like, "Oh, okay." Pretty simplified version of a convoluted story. So these two guys start to make fun of Simon, and then the theater teacher comes out and helps him before he does something like he'll regret. And Simon talks to one of the other classmates that earlier in the movie she had come out as lesbian. So she talks to him about how being gay, or being lesbian, I guess, I'll differentiate the terms here for clarification, for her was hard. And then Martin tries to apologize to Simon, but Simon blasts off on Martin, saying how, this was not just about him, but about Blue as well. And Blue finally gets this message, Simon, and says he knows everything, and he wants to cut off the whole email thing. So Simon just decides to ask the most recent person if he thought was Blue, but the answer is a clear no. So he goes back home and he asks the mom if she had known, and she said, I don't know, I guess, maybe, but you're still you. Stuff like that goes on. He tries to make amends with Leah first, and he mentions how he was trying to protect Blue, and then, she starts to ask him about how he feels about guys and stuff like that. So Simon meets with his dad, trying to patch things up. The dad's trying to figure out how long he had known that he was gay, and then he apologizes for the jokes, and then he asks Simon for help, and Simon agrees. So afterwards, after all that, he decides to write an open letter, I guess, to everyone at the school using the same website that everyone apparently checks out. And he pretty much addresses that that he had fell in love with Blue, and that, all the convoluted stuff, and apologizing for all that stuff. So the cabaret play goes off pretty good. And his friends finally come to him, and, they make their amends finally. So everyone's now officially cheering Simon on as, again, just that one email was enough to get everyone on his side. So they cheer him on as he enters this Ferris wheel, where he would say he would meet Blue face to face, person to person, if he did decide to show up. So he goes on the carousel, or sorry, the carousel, shoot, I just said it too. Anyway, so he's riding on the Ferris wheel. There we go, and everyone's cheering him on. So he goes for a few rounds, and then he runs out of money, and then Martin shows up, declaring at first that he is Blue, but Simon knew that clearly couldn't have been the case, and then Martin makes his amends by shoving more money to allow Simon one more ride. And then, just as things look bleak, just as everyone's getting on their downside, and they all go, "Aw, Bram, who we saw earlier kissing that girl, shows up, and he was the one who enters with the on the wheel with Simon, who says that he was the one that was Blue all along." But Simon's a little bit confused, and then Bram explains how he was drunk and how he made a mistake and stuff like that happened, and how he was not even sure if he wanted to show up for a little while, but then ended up deciding to. They make it up to the top, and then they share their kiss of love, and everyone is all good. So some time passes after their makeout session, and then Simon goes through his morning ritual with all of his friends, plus Bram. And that is the end of the movie of Love, Simon. For the most part, it is a pretty good romance movie. I do think the comedy aspects that they tried to put in were a little bit either done before, and the way they executed them just weren't as good, or they felt very out of place. Like, the musical number is very out of place. The whole coming out as straight being the weird thing, again, it comes off as very out of nowhere sort of cut, if you will. I think the characters are okay. They have their one quirk, if you will. And I think the relationship stuff is kind of a little bit too convoluted. I think they could have simplified some of that just a little bit there on that aspect, but I guess it technically is high school, so I don't know if love gets that convoluted at that point, but because he did mention how he was like, oh, it's at college, he'd be like openly gay, and then that's where the whole musical number cuts in. I do think the mystery aspect was a little kind of hurt the movie a little bit, because you don't really get to know who Bram is as a character. I mean, you get like the beginning where he first we hear his messages, but other than that, as soon as they cut off the possibility of it being Bram until the end, you kind of really don't know who he is as a character until you just get that beginning chunk, which isn't really that long when you think about it, and then you get that ending chunk, which again isn't actually that long when you think about it. And I think, I think in the end, it's still an okay movie. I do think some of it could have been cut a little bit there, uh, obviously, but whatever. I'd give this movie a 6 out of 10, honestly. I do think that the convoluted stuff kind of hurt it, and I do think the pacing was a little bit, or the execution of the characters were just got a little bit lost along the way because there were so many characters to try to keep track of. There were all the friends. There was all the friends' relationships. There were the relationships that Simon was possibly going with, which there was. I believe there was 3 different ones where Simon thought it was someone else, and then he thought it was someone else. So you have to keep track of all those characters, but they're not really the one, so you don't really have to, I guess. I don't know. But, I still think it's good enough to warrant, again, a 6 out of 10. And that's my review of Love, Simon. And if you enjoyed this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out that link in the description or head over to my Patreon page. And any donations are greatly appreciated. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye! Ooh.